Welcome back to Access. I'm Ken.
And I'm Nicole.
And we are starting into the pastoral epistles.
Does that mean they take place in a field?
Does that mean that he's nice?
Does it have lots of sheep?
Pastoral here does not refer to a field or mean that Paul's being, extra nice. It means that these are letters that are addressed to one person as opposed to a community. There's some disagreement over whether to include the letter of Philemon as a pastoral epistle. I'm going to include it in because it's written to one person. So we're going to look at all four together. First and Second Timothy start us off. As we've talked before, there are significant questions about the authorship of First and Second Timothy, and really all the pastorals except for Philemon. We're not going to touch on that very much here, but we want you to be aware of it. I'm going to treat them as if it is Paul, and I like these letters in the sense that I read them in the vein of Paul talking to Timothy. Timothy we know from Acts, he's this young person, and so I hear this in the vein of Paul, not now just giving advice to a church, but giving advice to someone who's going to go and be a pastor.
Yeah, and they sound like that because so much of it is very practical ways to get a ministry or a church going.
Exactly.
Like if I was a church planter, which I know you were, I would kind of rely on the pastorals to get it kind of going and what to look for in leadership, how to order things, and the early church did too. And so that's why the pastorals were so helpful, especially in the early church. Yeah.
I would say the pastorals are probably the most hotly debated.
Oh yeah.
And so I worked with the group that we've been reading through with this, and this is my own gut feel, but I think the church today is more divided. It's not divided so much over Jesus and
right.
What we think about Jesus. We are, however, more divided over the pastoral epistles specifically. So in the pastoral epistles, we get the most kind of clear language in a socially conservative vein about women being silent that we'll look at, and other issues as well. And I think my sense is a church like the main line, the Presbyterian Church that we're a part of, kind of they wink at the pastoral epistles a little bit. We read them and we say, but Galatians, neither female or male.
Yeah.
And we put the emphasis on that, and then other Protestant, like the mega church tradition right now, they read and put the emphasis on the pastorals, and then what we'll look at with the letter of Philemon, which and we could talk about Paul and slavery.
Yeah.
None of
Titus,
us.
too.
Yeah, and none of us agree with Paul. No one is going to defend Paul saying slaves submit to your masters.
No.
So I kind of want to start off the entire dialogue with the pastoral epistle saying all of us are making choices about where to put weight in these letters. So read the pastoral epistles, mine them for the wisdom that's there, and then acknowledge that some of these words we're going to kind of listen to more seriously than others, and that's not in the sense of, hey, let's just take what we like and chuck the rest, but it's in the sense of, certainly with slavery, where we go, there might have been something that was meaningful in Paul's day that has relevance no longer.
Yeah.
But we'll
and we can probably talk a bit, we'll have a discussion on why we choose to lean more towards Galatians versus this.
But that kicks us off. Tell us about themes.
Excuse me. So the themes for 1 Timothy would be a re-emphasis of the Jewish heritage, of the Jewish character of these communities. Well, I guess not really to a community, but
to Timothy's work with these
communities. And kind of continuity. Yeah. The centrality of Christology, and that's just a fancy word to say Jesus, or theology about Jesus, and its relationship to salvation. It's in Timothy that you get kind of the core of Christology a lot of times.
Okay.
or that's where people kind of taken things from and ran with it on Christ died for your sins kind of stuff, which we're going to see in Hebrews too.
Yes, big time.
Yeah, and then the orderliness of the church and the home, kind of that there's a structure to things, and that structure makes for good working.
Yeah, and that's where, like, the pastorals, to me, see, people argue that they're not Paul, and one of the main arguments is that, well, it doesn't sound like the Paul of freedom of Romans and Galatians, and I kind of want to say, yeah, and mainly because he's talking to a person who's trying to start communities.
Right, it's not the same issues.
And, you know, here Paul is going to be talking about structure. We need a little bit of structure now.
Yeah.
So to me, it actually feels like Paul being balanced, you know, as a full human being. That sometimes you need to throw the yoke off and go crazy, and, you know, then sometimes you've got to buckle down and make things orderly.
And figure out, okay, should we just choose the guy on the corner to be the pastor?
That's right.
Or
you, sir.
You with the billboard on your chest. You shall be a deacon. No. You don't pick Joe off the corner. Like,
Joe off the corner, we're sorry.
You're going to just have to settle for being an elder and instead of a deacon. But, like, that, you know, you should look for certain things.
And the discussion on widows is hilarious. Paul spends a lot of ink on how to deal with widows, who represents a true widow. You know, this is what a pastor says to another pastor who's going in and saying, all right, you know, there are going to be widows in the church. No, you got to take this carefully. Yeah, because
I remember, like, in our first meetings, you were like, this is how you do a wedding, and handed me a packet.
Exactly, and it's all about order, and like, here's normal.
Yes, here's how you do a funeral, if you ever do a funeral.
Did you even keep any of that?
They are in a pile. I know where they are, sort of.
Well, let's dive in. We're gonna start off talking about Paul's, you know, earliest, some of his earliest words to Timothy, where he's just sort of setting the tone here. And he talks about his own brokenness. In fact, he refers to himself as, I, Paul, the foremost of sinners, or the chief of sinners, is older language. And Paul starts this whole letter off, which can sound, I think, remarkably judgmental and rule-bound and like detailed in a kind of a ridiculous kind of way. But he starts the whole thing off saying, all of us are broken. All of us are full of sin. And he talks about his own life, how he starts out in lawlessness, and refers to himself as the foremost, the chief of sinners. And some people hear this as Paul being not genuine, that he's just saying, but I don't. I hear him. It's like the teacher that you love the most, because they are human.
Yeah, and I would have to think, doing the work that Paul does, he can't always, in his heart, be like, I can't believe I used to kill these people. You know, like...
Sorry about that.
His sin is ever before him.
Yeah, you bet.
In a big way. And so I think that sounds like Paul. It comports well with Romans 3.
The good that I want to do, I don't do. The evil that I don't want to do, that's the thing I do.
I do it really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think it sounds within a Pauline vein. Yeah.
Which, and in my sense, I don't know how you feel, but I think the more you try to be faithful to the tradition, the more one is aware.
Yeah.
Of, not in a mean, like, I'm a bad person kind of way, but in a real sense of, man, this is hard.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to be loving, I don't feel like it.
If you think Christianity is a cakewalk, I think you're on the wrong cakewalk, you know? Like...
What is a cakewalk?
It's a game.
Is it?
Yeah.
I know it was a dance at some point, but before the dance, was it...
It's a game, like musical chairs.
Okay.
But you land on cakes.
Oh.
Like pictures of cakes. And then you win that cake.
I just wondered, like, is a cakewalk easy?
Yeah. It's walking around in a circle onto pictures of cakes.
That sounds pretty nice.
It is. And at the end, you get a cake.